Matthew 11. Well, we return to the story of John the Baptist. We heard that he was put in prison back in Matthew 4. Now, of course, Matthew 11. We're not sure how much time passes between these chapters, but we now hear he is still in prison. And that's the setting then of our story in Matthew 11. What's, again, fascinating to us, it should be fascinating to us, is that Jesus calls John in our chapter the greatest man that has ever lived. I think it's verse 7. There's none greater than John the Baptist. Now he's trying to again push back from the idea that because John is suffering, he must have done something wrong. And Jesus is clarifying, no, among people that have been born on earth, there is none greater than John. This will be predictive of John's ministry that is again quite stunning to us, because we meet in, for instance, in Acts 18 and Acts 19, people like Apollos who are brought up in Alexandria, Egypt, and they go to Ephesus on a business trip of some kind, and Paul meets them, and they are followers of John the Baptist and not of Jesus, and that's a generation, of course, after Jesus has come and gone. So John's ministry, which Jesus seems to be a part of early on, in one sense takes off and remains, at least in one sense, stronger than Jesus, even after Jesus' ascension. So that is part of the corrective that's going on in the story of the New Testament. Well, John's question is a good one, because what has happened is that he's in prison, and of course during the days of Jesus, messianic hopes were varied. Some believed in a particular Messiah who would fulfill the role of David. Some, and this comes out of Qumran, the ascetic group down there by the Dead Sea, believed in two Messiahs, one priestly, one kingly. Another group of Jews seem to have believed in a coming Moses prophet, or a Moses-like prophet. Of course, we have the prediction from Malachi 3 and 4 that Elijah, or a role of Elijah, would come as well. The Sadducees had no belief in any messianic age at all. So again, among Jews, there's competition in what to think about the future to come. So when John sends two of his disciples to ask Jesus, John, in other words, joining the question, what kind of kingdom are you bringing, Jesus, if it includes me being in prison? Jesus goes right to Malachi 3 and 4 and basically says the story is the same. Everything is on target. God has promised that a messenger would come before the Messiah. This is the messenger. This is Elijah's role, Jesus says in our reading. And so hang with it, as it were. And again, what's amazing is that John hangs with it, but John dies in that prison. He never gets out. So what you have then in the story of our reading is Jesus saying, yes, you are the one to come, but no story that anyone had understood fits this model. And he's just basically agreeing that God's story is intact, but it's still confusing. No one had put the story of Malachi 3 in this setting. So Jesus is trying to encourage not just John, but the followers of John and his own followers, that as here is how the verse goes. I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven, that you have hidden these things from the wise. And I don't take this to mean that God is hiding things from people who don't deserve the truth. Jesus is saying, we have a story that's still on plan A, but this story is not being played out in a way that anyone, even the most godly of people, can have figured out if they had sat down and read through it. So we are really anticipating, with this kind of wording, a story that Jesus will continue to tell, including his own death and resurrection, that will be surprising, that people could not have gone back in their Bibles and found. That's why I don't really think it's valuable time spent going back into the Old Testament and trying to find Jesus and the story of the Messiah, when everyone, and I mean everyone, who was living in the days of Jesus, including the most godly of all, couldn't have figured it out. So I don't sense, for my money, my time would be well spent in going back and saying, there it is, there it is, there it is. They should have figured it out because of this verse, and this verse. I think as we go through the story and we watch people playing out their acts of the play, as it were, John is doing everything right, including wondering. That means, and this is important, that when I follow Jesus 2,000 years later, and I'm still wondering, God, why? I'm having the same answer. Well, these things are hidden. These aren't being revealed to people who are godly. These are things that are hidden from everyone because this is just how the story is going to go. I will recommend in the end that Jesus himself will not have everything revealed to him. The timing of his coming, even the purpose of his own death, I think was something that we'll see when we get to the garden scene, that Jesus is still wondering, why, God, is this story going down the path where I am repeating even John's death in how it works. Well, the great verses at the end of Matthew 11, only in Matthew, let's end with that. Remember the two groups, before I even read the text, remember the two groups that Jesus is dealing with, the two extremes. Jews who had a view of the Messiah that included the heightening of ritual purity practices that had already intensified through the Maccabean period, through the exile period, and now we're in full force. And Jews, these Jews who would think that because we get a Jewish Messiah, we're only going to heighten our ritual purity practices all the more. On the other hand, Jesus will say these words coming up to Gentiles who are constantly wondering which God to worship, how to worship the right God at the right time, how to perform libations and attend processions, and how to give votive gifts, how and what to wear at different temples and things like that. To both of these extremes comes this fantastic statement, "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And even John needed to hear that in prison, that to give your life to the teachings and the God of Jesus is to be, in one real way, the most easy living, easy way to function on our earth. And I think that's the intention, going all the way back again to the Old Testament. It was never meant to be a life prescribed by ritual and rules and what to do when and how to do things. That's not the point of the story as we read. So Jesus says it very well there in Matthew 11 at the end. It reminds me of a section in Screwtape Letters where C.S. Lewis has two demons talking to each other, and one says to the other, we have learned that humans have fallen to the idea that that being holy means to not be happy. And he turns that around, of course, to say that in his sight, this demon, that the holiest person that he usually finds is the happiest.